Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to easily cut metal lines in your vehicle, and what we're talking about mainly is whether it's copper, nickel, aluminum, steel, lines used for fuel lines, transmission lines, brake lines, things like that. You want to be able to cut it properly so you don't damage the line. So let's go ahead and get started. Now for this video, the only tool that I'm going to be using is this little mini tubing cutter. You can pick these up at automotive stores, hardware stores, very inexpensive. But this will give you a nice clean cut in any of those metal materials that we mentioned at the beginning. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and get a piece of tubing. We'll put it on there and I'll show you how to use it. Now with this little tool here, you have this little handle on the end here where you can screw it, and I'll get a close-up, but basically you can open and close this rail system here that has the blade on it, and then you can put the piece of tubing in there depending on the diameter, and you can adjust it for that thickness, and then from there make that clean cut. So let me get a close-up. We'll go ahead and put it in. I'll show you how it's going to cut it. So you'll notice as I rotate this counterclockwise, you'll see it opening as it slides away. And if we turn it clockwise, you can see it's starting to close in. So we'll go ahead and put it on the pipe, and then we'll adjust it accordingly. You want the pipe to rest right in that groove so that that blade can then come on the other side of the radius and start making the cut. So we have this piece of, this is actually part of a fuel line. So we'll go ahead and open it up wider, just enough so that can then lay in here. And I'll get an angle here so you can see what we're doing. But you have those little rollers. We're going to lay it right in there, and then we're going to go ahead and rotate this so we can go ahead and lock it in place. So with that laying in place, we'll go ahead and turn it. And then, as you can see here, it's nice and pinched in, and then we can tighten it. You want it to be as tight as you can get it, because that will enable the blade on this side to start to cut in on the surface. There we go, it's nice and tight. Now keep in mind first, what you want to do is measure the length that you want to be at, and you want this to be right on point where you want the cut, because that's going to be a very accurate cut. So let me get a close-up so you can see how this looks as it's set in there before we start making the cut. And there you can see how the blade is resting on the actual tubing. And if we turn it here, let me see if I can get a shot of it here from the side. You can see how it's resting in there with the blade against it. And this is right in that groove. So we have it secured properly. So now I'm going to start rotating it, and then we'll take a look and see how it's cutting it. So the next thing that I'm going to do is then I'm going to start turning this. You want to hold the actual tubing nice and sturdy so it won't rotate, but you can rotate this, the cutter, around it. So we'll go ahead and start turning that, slowly going around it. And then as we start to go, you'll notice it's getting a little bit loose, as it is right here, because it's cutting in. So what you'll do is you'll stop and then turn that a little bit more clockwise to dig it in a little bit, and you'll keep doing that. So we'll keep going around it a few times, and then as it starts to get a little bit loose, then we'll stop and we'll turn this clockwise a little bit more, and each time that blade is digging in a little bit more, and it's making a nice clean cut. Go around it again a little bit. Turn it a little bit more. And let me show you up close what it's starting to look like. And as we look, you can see on the outer diameter here of that tubing, you can see that little hairline cut starting to appear. And that's where each time that I tighten this, and we go around, it's digging in, making that cut. And then when it gets loose, and as I'm tightening it again, that little edge of that blade is digging in a little bit more, a little bit more. We'll keep going around like that. See there? It's gradually cutting into it. So we're almost pretty much cut through to the inner diameter. So I'm going to keep doing that, tightening it each time it starts to get loose, and we'll have a nice clean cut. Tighten a little bit more. We're going to keep on turning it. It starts to get a little bit loose. Tighten it a little bit more. With each thing, it's cutting in more and more. And you'll see when we're done, we're going to have a really nice cut. And this is how I always cut, whether it's brake lines, transmission lines, fuel lines, when you're dealing with metal material. I just use this little thing right here. Get a nice clean cut, right on point too. And there it is, came right off. And I'll get a close up here. You can see how clean of a cut this is as opposed to using any other cutting tool. And as we look at it closely, look at that nice cut. Very nice, right, perfect on that edge, nice and straight cut. And at that point, if you wanted to flare it or whatever you're doing there to connect that end, you have a nice finished end to deal with. And as we have there, we just saw it, nice clean cut. Now what you don't want to do, you don't want to be using any kind of cutters or any kind of tools that could possibly crimp down on it, because you don't want to have the diameter close in on itself, because then you'll lose the flow that's needed. And I'll show you what will happen if you use a set of wire cutters or things like that. Here's what will happen. If you try to cut it with any kind of clippers or cutters, you'll have one of two things that'll happen. One, this right here, where you'll pretty much have it just collapse on itself. You'll have the cut, but it's been damaged, or as shown here on this side, where the cut was made, but that's what happens right here. Let me clear that up. You pretty much collapsed on the sides on it, and any flow is damaged. Even if it didn't completely close like that, you're still losing. You're losing that full inner diameter for the flow. So you don't want to be using any kind of cutters or things where it's going to crush it in like that. So you can see this works out really good. And like I showed already, it's just this little guy right here. Inexpensive, pick that up. I've been using that anytime I've had to deal with brake lines, transmission lines, fuel lines, things like that. It's pretty simple, nice cut and dry. So that wraps up this video. I hope it was informative for you. I hope it helped you with any projects you're working on. If you have any questions, comments, please send them in. I would love to hear from you. As always, I appreciate all the support. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next time.